I'm Tarot Oracle. We're continuing with the Tarot and Symbology. We're now on the Cups Part 2. So we start with the Six of Cups. Now, the 6 being sort of that after the 5, and the 5 is just a terrible number, and the 6 we're sort of rolling into something a bit better or something a bit more positive. And here we have 2 small children sharing a moment. Now, the cups are obviously about emotional bonds, emotional attachments, and just emotions in general. And the children represent the innocence or that time in our life to where we sort of forming our opinions about things, forming our memories, forming our lives pretty much is how we're going to grow up to be as adults. And we have that female nature or that intuitive nature of the cups represented here by 2 small girls. So one interesting thing about this card that you may not have noticed is there's a singularity between it, if that makes sense. So it's like pointing to a 1 instead of the 2 girls. We have this offset of a 1. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we have 1 leg, 1 foot, 1 arm, and 1 arm. Nowhere do you see the second arms, or nowhere do you see the second legs. So it's an interesting aspect of this particular card, and I think, just my opinion, since I don't think anyone's ever noticed that before, that this points to the singularity that you have, even though, or that individuality that you have, even though you have 2 people sharing a moment, we have that that individuality or that singularity still maintained. In other words, they're still individuals, they're still separated, because of the 1 that we have across here. So the first girl is offering up, or either that or showing a cup. Again, with the hand motions, this sort of points to showing, and this points to offering, and we have a firm grip on the cup, which again, in my opinion, sort of represents that. And this is different, right? Because in the Ace of Cups, again, we have the offering. So we're offering a cup in here, and we're sort of showing or maybe giving a cup. But again, maybe her hand is not large enough to hold it. I don't know. But we have that connection between these 2 people. And the other girl is not receiving. When you receive something, you hold out your hand. And she sort of has her hand there. In addition, her hand is protected with a glove. So this is obviously not going to be the level of protection you're going to have from having armor or something, for example. But we do have that protection. And I think it's fascinating that we have that one girl has an added level of protection. Looks like an oven mitt. Who wears an oven mitt? Outside, I don't know. Maybe she was working in the garden. Maybe those are garden gloves. Who knows? So again, we have that. So each individual cup has a flower, and this particular flower is sort of not exactly blooming towards the camera. It's more just sort of buried within there. So again, we have that individuality here, and we have that individuality here. We have the individuality pointed by the fact that you only see 1 limb and 1 leg, etc. So that's just my thing. So the flowers obviously represent a new life or a birthing of life when the flower opens, and then bees can come get the pollen, etc. So the goblet represents that, again, that emotional connection or that emotional part of within here, and then the houses in the background represent the family. So we have that family connection to where we have the cottage, and then we have someone living there, so it could be family members, maybe sisters, etc. So we do have one person sort of walking off, and we have a wall separating them. So that could be a barrier in my tarot classes, but maybe not. Is there a barrier between these people and the rest? Is this a private moment? Anyway, a lot to think about. I know I sort of overloaded you with the 6 of Cups, but the 7 of Cups will even be more stuff. So let's go to that one. Now we come to the main meat of the matter, which is going to be the 7 of Cups. So much to do here. So the person is shrouded and sort of covered up, almost like he doesn't mean anything. and he's looking around at a bunch of options. So a lot of ways to read this card. One is this person has a lot of options. Another is this person has gifts, etc. Depends on how you want to read it. So let's go through the symbology, which is a lot. So this is sort of like a dragon. So the dragon represents power and courage. So the power and courage and the abilities that the dragon has, as with fire breathing, etc. He represents one of the cups. So one of the cups has a dragon coming out of it. Is that something that you would choose? Maybe not, but you definitely have that option if you see it as an option. Now we have the wreath, and the wreath represents sort of that that you have accomplished things. So the wreath is a decoration for someone who's accomplished a lot. So you have that dragon here as well. So I don't see the wreath over here. I see more of a rainbow. Anyway, the wreath represents that sort of almost that celebratory thing, or that the wreath represents something that you can be proud of, something that represents the achievements maybe, etc. And you have that option as well. Now, the jewels represents the wealth, obviously. We have the wealth, and the jewels are shining, and the hooded figure is shining as well. So this represents wealth. If you had a choice, would you take achievements? Would you take challenges? Would you take that strength and power? Would you take the stability of the castles, or would you take unlimited money, maybe the wealth, right? So the wealth in here represents that maybe you have that security, you have the money, and the money is glowing, meaning that this option and this option may be a bit more powerful than the others, or these may be trying to be more alluring in a purposeful type of way. Is this alluring? Is this something that you want to engage with? That's up to you, but it's very interesting how that works out. So the snake represents, obviously, the transformation from one thing to the next. We see that in the Thoth deck and many of these, where the snake represents change. Here we have, for example, the change card. So it represents change or transformation from one thing to the next. As with here, you'll notice the snake is eating its tail, but the snake is not eating its tail. It's sort of coming out of the goblet. So then we have the head representing the higher level of thought, or representing the attunement with the divine, in my personal opinion. That's what that means. And then obviously the goblet in here, again, represents the cups, that emotional attachment, the emotional bonds. So we have this wealth of emotions to choose from, or things like that. So the hooded figure, a lot of different people have theorized a lot of different things that go with that. My theory, and one interesting thing with this card, is you'll notice the open body language. There's no closed body language within here. It's all open. So we have this open body language, sort of, here, give me something, and here, I am open to this. So one of those things, in other words, represents to me is an opportunity or something hidden that is a good opportunity for you. And a lot of times we'll have that with something that is hidden from us, and yet we sort of know about. So it's right on it's right in our mind, or it's right on the forefront of our mind, and it's something that can be unveiled if you want, and has that opportunity or has that option that's secret for now, or that's just on maybe the tip of your tongue or the tip of your mind, an option that's going to be good for you. And he is glowing red, the figure, she is glowing red. One interesting thing that could be is that could maybe not be a person. I find it interesting, maybe the legs would start there, but they don't. It's almost like it's a scarecrow, maybe, right? Because that doesn't look like a person. That looks like just a pole or a stick or something. I mean, it looks like a piece of wood, maybe. It doesn't have the curves that you have on this man, or curves on a woman, or anything like that. It's just straight. So that could be a scarecrow. That could be a trap, in other words, as well. So it's alluring us in with the red outline, and yet when you unveil it, it's not actually a person, or it's not the opportunity that you were looking for. So a lot of interesting things. And obviously the cloud represents that attunement with the divine, or the movement, a higher level of movement, maybe a transition from one thing to the next. When a cloud comes, it transitions us from sunny to rainy or something like that. So the veil could also, over here, could also represent a bit of the mystique that we have sometimes. Maybe there's something alluring and very hidden and secretive, like you'll see a magic trick, for example, and you will wonder how to do that, and it's fascinating and it bothers you and things like that. So it could be something mysterious that is also interesting. But one of the main things that I think is interesting about this is the shadowing of the person in the foreground. It's almost like that there's something dark behind him, like really dark areas behind him, and that's why he's shadowed in. So it could be something to where he's in a dark place. He's not in his best place right now. He could be in a dark spot in his life, could be in a dark place, and that's sort of behind him. And in front of him are all these choices. So he's coming from this dark place into this place with lots of choices and lots of cool things. Anyway, way over an analyzed Seven of Cups, but there we go. Now we come to the Eight of Cups, are maybe bad choices, maybe just rejection of all choices. So it's interesting, the moon again represents the cycles of our lives. The moon moves quickly, so we have all these different cycles within our lives that happen, and the moon is sort of depressed. The moon has a face, and the moon is looking down upon the situation. The situation is kind of dark, right? It appears to be sort of a moonlit night, and the moon is sort of darkening the mountains in the background. Obviously, the mountains represent the challenges, and he has a lot of challenges ahead of him, in addition to the hill that he has to climb to get away from the cups. So this is sort of a rejected type of feeling. He did not drink any of the cups. You don't see any of them spilled over. You don't see, any sign that he actually drank any of the contents of the cups, although we don't see any contents in the cups, but whatever. It doesn't look like that he partook in the cups, at least in my opinion. It looks like it's sort of rejected. So these are rejected choices. And it's interesting that it comes right after the predominance of choices. Now we have everything being rejected. So we have a person again with a stick, maybe a cane, it could be an older person, and he's sort of climbing this hill, and he has rejected the cups. So another interesting part about this card is there's a barrier, sort of a little bit of water between where he is and where the cups are. So it could be something to where he didn't even bother going over there. It could be something to where he didn't want to run over there or get his feet wet. I mean, who knows? But there's a distance between them. It does look like that they are connected here, but the card is definitely showing us a barrier or a little bit of a distance. Obviously a small distance. It looks like the size of his foot, but whatever, between one edge of this and the other. But either way, it looks like he's rejecting it and he's leaving. So this has sort of a down feeling or a negative feel of that 8, and the fact that he's sort of rejecting it and leaving. Over here we have a definitive old person, or an older man with a hat, and he doesn't have if that's a cane, I guess it has some leaves at the top of it, etc. Again, he has a lot of mountains to climb as well. So it looks like there's a lot of mountains to climb. It looks like there's a lot of challenges ahead. This is definitely not a situation to where you're just going to be free of challenges or it's going to be an easy going. I mean, in a lot of these cards, we have mountains far in the background, but these mountains are right here. I mean, this is just straight up right here. So that's one of the interesting parts about this, is just how many challenges he has ahead. And he's not excited about it because we have that negative feel throughout. But anyway, that's the symbolism for the 8. Now, moving along, we have the 9. So the 9, I realize we just did this with tarot and astrology, but so this person has very closed body language as far as the top of his body. And you see that also with the swords. It's interesting that the closed body language only applies to certain parts of their bodies. In other words, the closed body language is sort of represented at the top portion instead of the bottom. And we see that as well with the Two of Swords. Here we go, I found the Two of Swords. So she's closed body language up top, but seated normally in bottom. So it's interesting that we have both of these, the 9 and the 2 being that. So he has this closed body language with this interesting pose that he has. So he does have a bright red hat and sort of giving him a joviality or a bit of a, as well as the smile. So the smile is sort of a representation of being in a good mood because he has all of this stuff. But again, he's closed body language, meaning he may not want to share. That's what represents that, in my opinion. He may not want to share. He has all this wealth, he has all of these options, and he just may not want to share. This could be one of the situations to where maybe he chose the wealth, and the wealth gave him an endless supply of drink, who knows. But he definitely doesn't want to share with that closed body language. But he is grinning, in other words, he's in a good mood for that. Now also you'll notice that this is sort of surrounding him, making a definitive barrier on his backside. And a lot of times when we put a barrier on our back or something like that, it's for defensive purposes, right? We don't want to be attacked. We don't want anyone behind us, etc. So it looks like that's sort of the situation that he has given to himself. Now the other piece of symbology on here is that he's seated on a bench for stability, standard stability and things like that. So his undergarment appears to be red as well as his hat, maybe that fire element of maybe I'm going to do something with all of these cups, maybe I'm going to have a party, who knows. So definitely closed body language. He's happy to be surrounded by the cups. In addition, he has a barrier to his back for protective purposes. So that is the 9. We do have a totally different representation of this here. We have sort of a middle-aged man here, and then we have maybe an older man on this 9 of cups. Now he does have the cups behind him, and he does have that big protective barrier to his back, but he does have a lot of other things, including a feather, again, sort of relaxed feel, joviality, and he doesn't have closed body language. So two different interpretations of the same card. Now finally we have the 10 of Cups. Obviously, as I pointed out in Tarot and Astrology, we have it all. And what I mean by have it all is we have the happiness, we have the family, we have the children, we have the nice house. We have it all, right? So we have everything being happy and everything is great. So the interesting thing about their pose is one has a hand here and the other has a hand here, almost like they're one unit, almost like it's one person holding out both arms, right? So it's almost like they're holding out one person holding out both arms. And I think that points to the togetherness or the unity we have between these two particular people. So we have water. Obviously, water is going to be important for survival and for living. We have look like a little lake or what have you, or a little stream of water. So they have it, again, they have it all. They have the riches, they have the success, they have the unity of being almost like one person because they're holding out one of each arm. And he has, you know, his arm around her, etc. And then we have the children, meaning that we have not only monetary success here and family success here, we have everything. In other words, we have it all. We have the life-giving water. We have the unity or the togetherness where we're not separated and fighting all the time. We're together and all that. And we have the children. And the children are happy and everything is successful. So the children are dancing. They're having a good time. They have their house. They have the greenery, meaning the life. So if they're growing things on the farm, they have the food and the water. So again, they have it all, right? The riches, the family, the home, the food and water, they have it all. So one of those things this card represents to me is having it all. Literally having everything that you want, everything that you need. So again, we have the same thing here, except, you know, he's holding out one arm, and we have the castle, we have the water, we have the greenery, we have the dancing children, etc. So everything is happy, etc. So anyway, this card to me, again, represents having it all. And that's one of the things that we want, right? We want the great job. We want the lots of money. We want the success. We want the extra stuff at the house, you know, the nicer TV. And we want the relationship that we look forward to coming home to, and the children that we love and that love us, and the riches. And we want it all. Everybody wants it all. So that's one of the things here is maybe you can have it all, or maybe we have it all already. So that's another thing with the card. A lot of times you're happy, but you're just not happy. And you see that with a lot of the rock stars as well, right? A lot of the rock stars, they have the wealth, they have a beautiful wife, relationship, they have this beautiful house, etc. And they're depressed, or they're drugged up. And they have it all, but it's just not enough. So a lot of times this card means to me is maybe you have it all, or maybe you have everything that you need, but you're just not recognizing it. It's not something that is in your head as being okay. Life still may be not okay. And it's one of those things you need to adjust your perspective to make it okay, or to, you know, to make it where you're not miserable, because you do have everything that you need. So that's just my opinion on one of the interpretations of this card, but it's what the card represents. It's very clear with all the symbology, again, very clear. And speaking of have it all, I have it all. All these beautiful Patreon supporters. What is Patreon, you ask? That's where you can support me and my work and help pay for some of the software, etc., for what I do. And I believe, right now at least, I'm the only one doing regular tutorials and classes. I'm the only one doing free reading. So if you would like to support me, I would appreciate it. Link in the description. My current supporters are Daily Empress, Adam G., Alley Cat, Annie Lemaster, Carmen Gabriello, Carolyn Bouchard, Crystal McGinn, Fatima, Gary Fink, Hot Chocolate, Jessica Mante, Kim Wilson, KSW, La Ami, Richard Ze, Scott Miller, Shintaro Kuga, Sinai Zamora, and Trino Iraverio. Thank you so much for being my Patreon supporters, and thank you for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.